Hi, I'm Rob of TwinFinity, and I am here today to do the next round of the masculine perspective. Ah, today I am in the basement, sitting on the couch, much more comfortable than last time. Last time in round two of the masculine perspective, I was in my weight room, and the energy in my weight room is actually quite dense. It is an area of work, it is an area of concentration. It is not really an area of meditation, although sometimes I can go there and miss a couple of sets of exercise that I've accomplished, but I haven't really paid attention to because my mind and my soul has drifted elsewhere. But wow, I was tense and focused and just ready to go, I suppose, for the last video. This one, well, what have I done? I've had a full day at work, I've come home, I've gone to the weight room and had my workout, and I've had a run, and now I've just had supper, and now I'm downstairs on a nice comfy couch. And if you're seeing this video, that means that I have actually not laid my head back and gone to sleep at some point in the middle of a question. I don't plan on doing that. As much as my energy right now is low, uh, my desire to do a video is actually quite high. I'm excited. I get excited for these things. I guess that's why I do them. So anyway, number three, phase three, video three of the masculine perspective. I'll call this question number 8 because it's question number 8 in comparison to the other ones that have happened. Question 8 is: fear is the number one emotion that keeps twin flames apart and out of love, along with a hurt ego rearing its ugly head. What can DFs do to help their divine masculines work through and get over this fear? And also, what can the divine masculines do in reverse to help the divine feminines in the same way? Perhaps avoiding another round of runner chaser. This question is hard to answer because the type of fear that the question was written with was not described in the question. So that means I get to choose the fear that I mostly had, especially when getting back into union. That's a fear that I remember quite strongly because the only real, true, strong fear that I had was the fear that all the tensions from when Angie and I were together in 1997 and early 98, I was afraid that things had not changed enough in either of us or both of us to stop those tensions from rising again. That was actually a big fear. And when Angie and I were starting to get back in touch again in 2014, I was really scoping out to see how much different Angie was. And then I was having a good long hard look in the mirror at myself, looking at how I was responding to the changes that had happened in Angie. So I was trying to analyze both of us. And it was out of fear that all that had broken us up all those years earlier was still going to be a big factor this time as well. That is a big fear, and I I'm really feeling a lot of empathy for those who want to have a much shorter journey than years and years of than having years and years of separation in the middle of their journey. There is so many people now that want to find their twin and be with their twin after a couple of years of adjustment, is what I would call that, as opposed to doing the runner chaser thing and then having a decade or more of separation and then drifting back together and finding out that things are much better now. Most of us don't want to go that route. So, to avoid enabling all this fear, I believe that one of the only ways to help fear is to be honest. I was afraid that Angie was still a bit too far out there for me. I was also afraid that I still couldn't handle where Angie was. So if a person, let's say nowadays, if a person nowadays chooses to just be honest, hi, I know you're not comfortable with some of the things that I do, but they're part of my core. I don't really plan on changing them much. They may develop, they may morph over time, but really I enjoy who I am. I enjoy what I deal with, and you're free to come along and be part of this journey too. But know that if what you see today is not necessarily what you see tomorrow, know that it's still in me. Know that I'm not trying to hide it, because I won't. I am who I am. That would be just completely, I'd almost call it disablingly honest. No one could ever hold it against you if you followed through on what you told them you were going to do or going to be like. It gives a person a frame of reference that they can choose to make all other decisions off of. For some, it may scare them away, but for, I think most people though would rather hear what they don't want to hear, but know it was said in honesty, than to always be wondering where a person is at. Wow, this being straight up, especially in this day and age where people are so busy and so focused on many things, to find someone who's just going to be honest about who they are is almost a relief. Whether you like it or not, at least you know what you're dealing with. So that is what I would say that divine masculines and divine feminines, both energies, could do for each other, is just be honest. Whether you're and let your fears be your own fears, not someone else's fear of you, and vice versa. I didn't really answer the question, but I gave an answer to a question that I believe needed to be heard. Question number 9. Yeah, I've just turned over the piece of paper on the clipboard. I have no idea what this question's going to say, and I'm sitting way too close to the clipboard. I almost have to flip my glasses up to read everything. My vision is not 25 anymore. My vision is in its mid-50s. You mentioned often in your early days of reunion that you didn't realize that Angie had changed as much as she had. Is there anything she could have done to have sped up the process of realization? Or did it need to happen the way that it did, as part of the divine masculine gaining trust in both himself, his DF, and the union they share? Wow, we almost just stumbled square into that with the last answer. I think my lack of realization in how much Angie had changed was partly because I was looking for changes in areas that I hoped would change. But that is not the areas that really did change in Angie. And it also wasn't areas that Angie needed to change. So the change that I was looking for was changes from the triggers that I had back in 97 and 98. Those triggers in me were not near as strong in 2014 and early 2015. Therefore, I was looking for the wrong changes for the first while. So that's why I didn't recognize that the changes in Angie were so deep, because I wasn't looking for them. I was stuck in my old mindset. This can happen to people, you know. What upsets them one decade is not what would bother them the next, and yet they still remember the fear. And because it was fear, it's often not accurate in one's three-dimensional mind as far as what they were afraid of. Just like me and spiders, I'm almost what you would call deathly afraid of spiders. I will scream and run away from a spider if it startles me. But I can't remember why I am afraid of spiders. I really hope it's something from a past life, because I don't think that a spider snuck up on me in my own conscious memory this life. And so therefore when I look at spiders now, I still don't understand my fear of them, but it certainly seems to be real. So I guess I live with that. I haven't figured out how to get by it. Same thing. In your past is often not remembered properly. And sometimes when you're looking for answers, you have to look and look and look to find the answers that are there, not the answers that you're looking for. So when someone is microanalyzing someone else, whether it's you to them or them to you, sometimes it's going to take a lot of patience for that person to come up with their answers that they're looking for. Oftentimes, it's going to be because they're not looking for the right answers to the right questions. That takes time. And that took time with Angie and I. Question 10. How can the often overly logical and right-brained divine masculines deal with the metaphysical aspects of the twin flame journey without thinking they have gone absolutely crazy? That's a good question. There's a lot more question after this. I'll read the whole thing. I'll come back to this. I would define the metaphysics aspects as 3D/5D, telepathy, hearing guidance and songs, synchronicities, remote viewing, kundalini energies, temporarily switching of divine masculine and divine feminine polarities, feeling your twin's feelings, feeling your twin being intimate with others, and the arrival of their clairaudience and clairvoyance, etc., etc. The clairs, as it was abbreviated. That was a whole lot of stuff. And for those people that start every part of their decision process from the highly grounded three-dimensional aspect, and when that cannot come up with an answer, then they cave in and they look through the mind's eye and the fourth and fifth dimension as their only hope of coming to any more clues that'll still help the three-dimensional thought process come to an analytical answer. That is often how people who are in 3D do things. They start from 3D, don't get an answer, reach to 5D for clues. When they get clues, they try to bring that back into 3D to still get them their answer, because the answer is only acceptable to them in three-dimensional thought. That is really tough, especially when they get answers that they don't understand how they got that answer. It becomes part of the learning of the trust process. And it's one thing to trust someone else and their judgment, but when it's your own feelings that are developing, yes, I went through this myself. When it's your own feelings that you're learning to gain some trust in, because you have a thought, you call it a thought, but really it's a feeling. And I consider thoughts and feelings completely different. Thoughts are much more three-dimensional than feelings. Feelings don't have a definitive end. Feelings are a hint. So when you start to live by trusting hints that come at you, that takes a lot of an adjustment time, a period to gain some trust. And sure, when the feeling is wrong for the circumstance, and you perceive that it's stumbled and fallen, then the analytical mind starts to say, well, feelings seem to be right 70% of the time, or 80% of the time, or 20% of the time, and then you learn to develop your levels of trust based upon your levels of success. Success is another three-dimensional judgment. But especially divine masculines, boy, I'm going down this road again. Success is a key portion of the programming. So learning how to deal with guidance and to trust synchronicities and all those other things, yeah, it takes time to develop that. But once that road starts to become accepted, it does open up other opportunities. It's like when you've got a can of something in front of you and you've got a can opener. You clamp the can opener on the can, it's not open. You start to squeeze it, the can still is not pierced. But as soon as you pierce that can, you now have no choice but to keep twisting that wheel of that little can opener. I hope everybody knows what a mechanical can opener works like. Some people may not. And you keep on twisting that wheel until the can's open and then you dump everything out. But it's getting that first puncture, that first bit of trust, the knowledge that you're not turning around, you're not going back, because you now have something else you can trust in. That, once it gets started, for a lot of people with a left brain, because left brain thoughts, because trust comes through evidence, once you get started down that road, then it opens up curiosity. And if a person's got any little bit of curiosity at all, then they keep going down that road, because then they've got abilities to know that sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's going to not. Then when it does work, it's amazing. And when it doesn't work, then that's all subject to all sorts of other analysis. And doing the analysis is even a comforting thing to do, because if a person is a very analytical left-brained person and they've had a failure and they still have their wherewithal about them, their own trust in themselves, that they trust their own ability to analyze it as to what it went wrong, then all they're doing is just supporting the times that it goes right too. They get their reasoning going back and forth, and then it just feeds on themselves and it becomes a whole new corner of their character. And it's really hard to shut that off. For people who are more right-brained, more five-dimensional, they don't do lots of analysis to support. They just have a lot of blind faith, being burned a few times because they don't naturally do that analysis. They are the ones that tend to take trust and shrink trust because they've trusted too much to begin with, and they haven't developed that ability to look at their spiritual world from multiple dimensions. They only try to look at it from the highest dimension that they can achieve. So I'm more concerned about the people that start at 5D without building the trust to get there first than the people who start from 3D and reach out and step by step by step learn to trust not only the process but themselves. I'm going to leave that alone right there. I think that was a complete thought. Okay, question 11. Yeah, it's question 11. I wonder what kind of a question this is going to be. What do you think your crash. There I go. I can read better. What role do you think your crash played in your TF journey and your own personal growth? Did it feel like some kind of energetic reset or something? Now that you know all about twin flameism? That was well spelled. Was it a dark night of the soul? The start of your awakening? A temporary switch into the DF polarity? Or perhaps a delayed reaction to pushing apart your twin, the other half of your soul? That question saved the best for last. My crash that I had, I up until a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have given it more than just the time of day of being exhausted from dealing with my twin flame. But at this now looking back at it, there was energies at play there that I had no ability to feel or understand at all. Uh, I look back at that crash with the thought that I bet you I'm going to say 30%. I'll give it one third of what pushed me over the edge. I didn't even know was pushing. I didn't even understand that it was there. And maybe that's why the crash was so scary. Is what was left of my rational mind didn't know what put it where it was. So yes, I really do think that my soul was grieving to the point that it completely spread throughout my rational mind, overloading my mind in ways that it had no idea that it was carrying a load, and very definitely uh, assisted me in being weak enough to actually have a crash on all fronts. Poor soul, sometimes it doesn't necessarily know what it's doing to this very dense three-dimensional body and brain that it's trying to exist in. I'm going to back up on that question. What role do you think my crash played in my TF journey and my personal growth? It taught me a little bit about boundaries. And boundaries, I have yet to find a circumstance that, if it goes really bad, wasn't contributed to because of a boundary failure. Those words I said just didn't work. I wish I could just back up 20 seconds and start that sentence all over again, because it was a great thought, so deep that it's messed up how I said it. So let's try that all over again. Most of the time, when you're dealing with a situation of personal growth. Nope, this isn't working again. I'm going to skip to a different part of the question. I got to come back to that. There's a little bit of profoundness in that question. I'm just not latching onto it. Did it feel like some sort of energetic reset? No. It felt like a kick in the head, and it felt like a lesson was being learned, but I had to go back and do all the refeeling and reanalyzing and everything to figure out what was wrong. I looked for a scapegoat. I considered work to be my biggest scapegoat. Work was a fairly large factor. I actually believe that the factors that couldn't be handled, though, was from my TF journey that I didn't know was a TF journey at the time, so I didn't know how to understand that. So I only looked at the primary cause of work because that was the only thing that I knew. I figured I just exhausted myself. 90 hours of talking with 8 hours sleep a few months earlier, I'm sure didn't help my cause. But that was okay. That was a ton of fun. Was it a dark night of the soul? I've never had a dark night of the soul. I've had very positive times in my life. I've had some times where I've been a little bit down, but I have I have never had a time in my life where I was so disappointed and down on myself, or down about myself and my situations that I was in, that I really felt hopeless to the point of being beyond despair and just wanting to end any form of despair. Never been that. Never been that far down. Now I can see myself in my video again. Ah, I'm having a fun night. Um, the start of my awakening. You know, in some ways, yes. In some ways, yes. I didn't realize it at the time, but by setting boundaries, which is now linking back to this part of the question that I struggled so much with, by setting boundaries that were more healthy, that also allowed, it also allowed things that were good to come into my life. Instead of living unhealthily and the unhealthiness blocking potential strengths, potential uh, knowledge, potential raising of vibration. By setting boundaries that were healthy, it allowed me to be stable enough to feel more than I ever really had before. I was so go, 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 achieve, achieve, achieve that when I finally hit a burnout point, and I didn't want to ever go back there, which I definitely didn't, never have wanted to, I think I'm just as afraid, in fear of burnout as I ever was. I've never lost that fear. So therefore, I've tried to stay far enough away from it that by being more healthy, I can learn more. It wasn't the goal, but it was a result. Some of the shielding that I did, not positive shielding, but the negative shielding, staying busy all the time, setting rigid schedules, all those things that were supposed to protect me didn't protect me. So when they stopped, something else had to also work. So, yes, it was a start of my awakening only because it allowed a door to be opened and to be left open. And I only had to get close enough to the door to look out and see what was on the other side every so often. Was it a temporary switch into the divine feminine polarity? I have to admit, before tonight, I had never considered that to be like, let's say, the Earth's magnetic poles, the north and the south, where there is scientific evidence that those have flipped in time. You talk about divine masculine and divine feminine polarity. I need to walk past that because I'm going to say right now, I am not I'm not well enough versed in that to comment about it. Maybe it was for me. I'm not about to overanalyze that right at this moment. I'd like to learn a little bit more about it. So I've run into a portion of the question that I can't really comment on because it's not something I know enough about and can resonate with an answer. There's that honesty I just talked about. I don't know everything, but I certainly do have some feelings and thoughts and opinions on stuff. Question 12. What advice could you give divine masculines about reinitiating contact with their twin flame after a period of separation? This question's also longer, but I'm going to stop right there. What advice could you give divine masculines about reinitiating contact? I'm going to change that question slightly from divine masculines to the runners, because usually it's divine masculines that are doing the running. It's the divine feminine energy that has it all figured out and is trying to do the teaching, and it's the masculine energy that's saying, what are you trying to tell me? I'm out of here. Usually it's not the divine masculine that reinitiates the contact. Usually it's the divine feminine energy that after a certain amount of time tries one more time after the runner has had a chance to rest for a while and catch their breath and regroup, and get their energy back, even though it might take years. It's usually the divine feminine energy that does the recontacting. And then, with that reservoir of protection around them, what they have learned from the past and what they've learned over the time of a little bit of separation, whatever that little bit definition is, then it's the divine masculine that may perpetuate that contact 2 or 3 times. So what advice could I give then that divine masculine energy or the runner person about getting back in contact with their twin flame after a period of separation? The advice that I would give would be to be careful and be slow and don't hurt your own energy. This is something that works for everybody. You have your energy. Sometimes you need to push your energy to get it to move through other passageways, to let it grow, to let it find new adventures. But to put it completely at risk, that's not advisable. So if you're moving into territory that was previously dangerous, which is getting back in contact with someone who it's not been a great time of contact with, go slow, be careful, gain the confidence. Expect that some things are not going to go smoothly, but don't let that terribly bother you. This goes for both directions. And it's really hard to advise the person who's been the runner, because it's usually not the runner who has gained the knowledge of having watched a video like this on how to be back in touch with their, let's say, divine feminine counterpart. I've often thought it would be awesome, if possible, for somebody like myself, or let's say Angie and myself, to be in touch with the twin flame, the twin flame person that has typically been the runner. We always see the person who has developed and is needing the help to try to get their twin to catch up. It would be neat to meet a group of twins that are on the catch-up side. Hi, we know, let's say, Rob and Angie. I trust them. It would be neat if you were ever able to be in touch with them. I've often thought that would be an interesting goal, but if it was at all practical, it would have already happened already, and it really hasn't happened. That seems to be a void in our learning process. The people who are resisting getting back together with their twin are the very people that would need to see other twins to get other opinions, to know that the person that they're afraid to get back together with or get together with again or even be in touch with isn't crazy on their own, that maybe they're part of other people who also understand them and trust them. That's an interesting thought. I might have to dwell on that. Okay. What advice would you give DMs when they may be expecting to somehow need to atone for past actions or things said, not said, and are hence maybe fearful, there's that word again, of or apprehensive on how or whether or not they will be received / welcomed back? Forgiveness is a big word. Fear is a big word. It is too bad that you just can't go back and wipe a slate clean and start all over again. Old slates are always there. They're never forgotten. They might become part of a conversation in the distant future where you look back and say, well, that was an interesting time in our lives now, wasn't it? But all the old slates, all the old templates of behavior are still there. I think it's very important that when starting over, and honestly starting over, not just rekindling the old, but starting the new, I think that both parties need to agree that there needs to be newness, and newness as far as stepping forward and forgiveness for the past. Because if you've only got one person that is willing to change and willing to accept their responsibility for things that both did and did not go well, if you've only got one person who's in that mind frame of acceptance of the past and being open to the future, but being responsible for their portion of what the past was, then you really don't have much of a chance in stepping forward again if the other person is completely standing on the old slate or old template, saying, okay, take another run at me. Nothing is going to be different because people don't change. The tiger does not change its stripes. If you've got that situation, I don't think you've been in separation long enough. That's a little blunt. That's a little harsh. But that's a direct point. Somebody hasn't had a chance to grow enough yet. But if you've got two people who are both willing to accept their contributions to the past and try not to contribute the same way in the future, if it's an agreement between the two of you, then that just throws the doors wide open for all sorts of possibilities in the future. Start with some boundaries, though. Yeah, this is turning into a boundaries video. It's all coming down to boundaries with this group of questions. Know that there is going to be some edges that are still going to be rough, and when you get close to them, you almost need to stand right at those boundaries, hand in hand, together, and look at those boundaries and understand what they are, and understand that there is a relationship between the two of you. Maybe you'd even want to call it love between the two of you that will still always stand between you and the dangerous edge of those boundaries. Then you can step away from those boundaries and put safety nets in place, verbal safety nets in place sometimes. They could be physical safety nets where they're not actually meshes, but if someone goes to a safe spot, know that they're not conspiring to come back out and lash at you if something's gone wrong in a conversation. Put those safety nets in place where one person understands that the other is not out there living completely in the past, still trying to sabotage what's going on now in the present and for the future. You've got to have the cooperation to begin with. I've gone back, I've said that again. If you don't have the full commitment on both sides, then set your goals lower. Let them be where they're at. There's so many times you stomp on those old triggers too hard to let them be comfortable sometime in the future, even with healing. When a trigger has healed enough, you can step on it and step back off it and end up in trust, as opposed to fear of whether or not that trigger is going to blow up again. Yeah. Don't get too carried away with stepping forward until both of you are ready. Both of you want to try to exist. And that doesn't mean exist together in union. just exist over a cup of coffee without stomping on each other's triggers. That's the best place to start. That is worth waiting for. If someone needs another year of rest and regrouping and reorganization, I'd advise giving it. Next question. Are there any easy ways? No. Are there any easy ways of working out what your twin flame mission or purpose is? Does the divine masculine get more insight than the divine feminine, or vice versa? I found, to begin with, that Angie and I, when it come time to discuss mission, we both came to a thought of what mission would mean in our lives. We came together with that thought fairly quickly. But the definition of what the mission would look like, I think, was a little bit different. And we both had to choose a common ground on it and then expand from there. Angie had her thoughts, I had my thoughts. I think we were both right in the end, because we've both got to get into the twin flame mission with the thought that we were both able to accomplish our own individual goals. Now, sometimes those goals can be very, very exhausting. It is another change in life when you decide you're going to contribute to society in a way that you haven't done before. It often feels like quite the burden, but at the same time, it's a I want to change the word from burden. It is a passion. It is a passion that you're willing to carry the weight of. Yes, it sometimes is heavy. Until you get used to how you want to carry it, you soon learn, if you're doing it wrong, that there's other ways of doing it. And once you finally hit a few comfort zones, then it really just starts to rock on. So, is there any easy ways of working out what your TF mission or purpose is? No, no. I've been advised by others, and very rightly so, that I would be quite well guided to direct my energy towards the earth, maybe towards farming. But I don't feel like I'm much of a farmer. I think that there's people that can do that aspect with their own energies with much more talent than I have. I still feel that I'm more of a teacher. I enjoy doing the teaching aspect, even if I'm learning what I'm teaching strictly out of feelings that I'm getting at the moment. I really enjoy that, and it took time to start to trust that. So no, going back to my first answer, even before I got through the question of no, is there any easy ways of working out what your mission or purpose is? Let it come to you. It's partial feelings and all of a sudden a need that you can participate in fulfilling will likely come along, and that'll give you your first directions, and from there sometimes it might be like walking through the fog, but just let it happen. And if it goes nowhere, then maybe the time is not right for you to be working on your twin flame mission or purpose. It'll find you. It'll find you when the time's right. I'm really starting to resonate with that thought, because for, let's say, Angie and I, it definitely was. And for me, yeah, it was something that came along and felt good, but it happened in the blink of an eye. I only had to keep on looking at it going, why is this thought not going away? Why is this not going away? the usual analytical bit, before I began to trust it. Once I got into it, yeah, it fit like a glove. Next question. It is said that the divine masculine often drops back down in consciousness after bubble love stage and forgets about the spiritual nature of the divine connection, while the divine feminine remains aware of it even though they don't know about the twin flame label. Was this true for you, Rob? Did you temporarily forget about the spiritual divine beauty of this connection only to remember at a later stage? If so, when was that? And how did that change for you later? It is said that the divine masculine often drops back down in consciousness after the bubble love stage. Yeah, I would have to believe that to be true because we have heard that time and time and time again. For me, I don't know if I ever left the bubble love stage. I think I suppressed it. I think I let it go. I think I even tried to cast it away, which is different than letting go. Letting go is set it down and it scurries away. Casting it away is moving it away and then turning your back on it and trying to make sure that it's going one direction and you're going the other. I think because of the respect I had for the relationship that Angie and I had back in '97, I never really let go of that bubble love. Between the reverse sunset and some of the feelings that I had never experienced before, I tucked that away in an area of fondness in my mind. So I never let it go. I didn't give it much energy to nurture it because I didn't believe I'd ever need it again. But the bubble love stage and forgetting about the spiritual nature of your divine connection. Well, first of all, I didn't realize that the divine connection was based upon spirituality. I perceived that it was a connection that, boy, I'm trying to get the right words here, that it was a connection that tended to bring about unusual spiritual events. But I didn't see it as being the trigger of those events. I saw it as being rewarded by those events. In other words, it wasn't something that we were creating in my mind. It was something that was being, like I said, rewarded by spirit giving us little tidbits of wonderfulness as a recognition that the other person was special. Not necessarily the connection was special or that myself was special in the relationship within a connection, because I didn't understand twin flameism back then. I just saw it as signs that the other person was special, not that I had anything special. That's the right words. So I didn't have anything to forget because I didn't have any expectations of it being a spiritual connection to begin with. Now, the divine feminine energy often is far enough into the understanding that they do go down the road of yes, this is the reason we're seeing these magical, wonderful things like reverse sunsets is because of the connection, not just the other person's existence, and this is just being a reward. So, yeah, it's all wonderful observation to say the divine masculine reacts one way and the divine feminine reacts another, because it just tends to be true. We can't take that away from how it really does appear to go down. So was it true for me? No, because I wasn't looking at the relationship as a connection. I was looking at the relationship as a deep friendship and an attempt at maintaining love, not a spiritual connection. Didn't know that. I bet you a lot of divine masculine energies, even when they're told by the divine feminine that that is what's going on as a deep connection, they don't have the resources, the energies, the understandings to even understand what a connection is or what it means or what it can do. So they just tuck it away as, oh, they must be meaning love, as opposed to what a divine connection can really be within the realm of love. You have to understand the definition first before you can accept what the words mean. And a lot of divine masculines hear the words without knowing what to do with them, what to categorize them as, what it can do. That is a deficiency in knowledge that the divine feminine, with all of their knowledge, forgets is only known by the divine feminine. Did you temporarily forget about the spiritual divine beauty of this connection? Well, like I said, I didn't understand that it was a connection. So therefore, I couldn't really forget about something that I didn't know about. But no, I did not forget about the gifts, the experiences along the way. I just didn't know what they were. When did that change for me later? With greater knowledge of what the connection was all about. And the knowledge didn't come really until after Angie and I were back together. Because it was then, after we were back together, once I had the trust that we could be together, and we had got back together, and that trust had been reinforced, I was then able, after union, to start to understand what had happened to me before union that just caused me to trust something that I still couldn't define. Whew. That's called a leap of faith. And we're very quickly leaping towards 1 hour in this video, and I think that that's enough. I've got a smile on my face. I've had some fun. I've stumped myself a couple of times with my own answers, and I'm very looking forward to not only finishing this sheet, but to getting on to some other questions that have come along as a result of the first two masculine perspective videos that I have done. So this is enough for this time. I'd like to bid you all, well, I'm going to say good night because it's nighttime as I'm doing this, and we will catch you later. Enjoy.